Have you been told you need to give up bread completely to maintain healthy blood sugar? What if I told you that's not entirely true? Today, I'm going to reveal the 3 specific types of bread that work with your metabolism instead of against it, plus the exact shopping checklist that will help you identify these glucose-friendly options in any grocery store or bakery. By the end of this comprehensive guide, you'll know exactly which breads to choose, how to read labels like a pro, and the simple combinations that can dramatically reduce blood sugar spikes. Let me start with something that might surprise you. Last month, I received a message from Margaret, a 67-year-old retired teacher from Portland. She'd been avoiding bread for 3 years after her doctor warned her about pre-diabetes. But after discovering the principles I'm sharing today, she's back to enjoying her morning toast without the glucose roller coaster. Her latest HbA1c dropped from 6.1 to 5.7, and she has more sustained energy throughout the day than she's had in years. Margaret isn't alone. Over the past year, I've heard from hundreds of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond who thought they had to choose between enjoying bread and maintaining healthy blood sugar. They've discovered what the food industry doesn't want you to know. Not all breads are created equal, and the right choices can actually support your metabolic health. But before we dive into the top 3 breads that respect your glucose levels, let's address the elephant in the room. Why does most commercial bread send blood sugar soaring in the first place? Understanding this is crucial because it will help you make informed decisions every time you're standing in the bread aisle. The problem starts with modern bread manufacturing. Most commercial breads are made with highly refined flour that's been stripped of its fiber, healthy fats, and protein. When wheat is processed into white flour, the bran and germ are removed, leaving behind pure starch. This starch breaks down rapidly in your digestive system, flooding your bloodstream with glucose faster than your body can handle it efficiently. Think of it this way. Imagine trying to start a campfire. If you throw a handful of paper onto the flames, it burns hot and fast, creating a brief, intense fire that quickly dies out. That's what refined flour does to your blood sugar. It creates a rapid spike followed by an equally dramatic crash, leaving you tired, hungry, and craving more carbohydrates within a few hours. Now, if instead you add a thick log to that same fire, it burns slowly and steadily, providing consistent warmth for hours. That's what the right kind of bread does for your metabolism. It provides steady, sustained energy without the dramatic peaks and valleys. But here's where it gets more complex. Even breads labeled as whole wheat or multigrain can be problematic. Many commercial whole wheat breads still use finely ground flour, which behaves similarly to white flour in your digestive system. The grinding process breaks down the fiber structure, reducing its ability to slow glucose absorption. Additionally, many manufacturers add sugars, high fructose corn syrup, or other sweeteners to improve taste and extend shelf life. There's another factor that most people don't consider: fermentation. Traditional bread making involved long, slow fermentation processes that actually changed the molecular structure of the starches and proteins. This fermentation creates beneficial acids and breaks down some of the rapidly digestible starches, resulting in a gentler impact on blood sugar. Modern commercial bread production, driven by speed and profit, often skips this crucial step entirely. The glycemic index, which measures how quickly foods raise blood sugar, tells an interesting story. White bread typically has a glycemic index of 75 or higher, which is considered high. For comparison, pure glucose has a glycemic index of 100. Many commercial whole wheat breads aren't much better, often scoring between 69 and 75. But the breads I'm going to share with you today, they typically score between 35 and 55, putting them in the low to moderate range. Now, before we continue, I need to emphasize something important. This information is educational and should not replace professional medical advice. If you have diabetes, pre-diabetes, or are taking any medications that affect blood sugar, Please consult with your healthcare provider before making significant changes to your diet. Everyone's metabolism is unique, and what works for one person may need to be adjusted for another. That said, the principles I'm sharing are based on solid nutritional science and have been tested by thousands of people who've found ways to enjoy bread while maintaining stable blood sugar levels. The key is knowing what to look for and how to incorporate these breads into your overall eating pattern. So let's talk about what makes a bread truly blood sugar friendly. First, fiber content is crucial. Fiber, particularly insoluble fiber, slows down the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. It acts like a buffer, preventing rapid spikes in blood glucose. Look for breads with at least 3 to 5 grams of fiber per slice, though more is even better. Second, protein content matters. Protein requires energy to digest and helps slow down the absorption of carbohydrates when eaten together. Breads that naturally contain higher protein levels from seeds, nuts, or protein-rich grains will have a gentler impact on your blood sugar. Third, the presence of healthy fats can significantly improve the metabolic response to bread. Seeds like flax, chia, and pumpkin seeds not only add fiber and protein, but also contribute omega-3 fatty acids and other beneficial compounds that support healthy blood sugar regulation. Fourth, acidity plays a surprising role. Breads made through long fermentation processes develop natural acids that can slow down the digestion of starches. This is why authentic sourdough bread often has a lower glycemic impact than conventional bread, even when made with the same type of flour. Now let's talk about how to evaluate bread when you're shopping. This is where many people get confused because food marketing can be extremely misleading. Here's your step-by-step checklist for identifying truly blood sugar-friendly bread. First, read the ingredient list, not the marketing claims on the front of the package. The ingredients are listed in order of quantity. So the first ingredient should be 100% whole grain flour. Look for terms like 100% whole wheat flour, 100% whole grain spelt flour, or 100% whole rye flour. Avoid anything that lists enriched flour, wheat flour, or unbleached flour as the primary ingredient, as these are essentially refined flours with added vitamins. Second, check the nutrition facts for fiber content. As I mentioned, you want at least 3 to 5 grams of fiber per slice, but don't just look at the number. Consider the ratio of fiber to total carbohydrates. A good rule of thumb is that fiber should represent at least 10 to 15% of the total carbohydrate content. For example, if a slice has 20 grams of total carbohydrates, it should have at least 2 to 3 grams of fiber. Third, examine the sugar content. Many commercial breads contain added sugars in various forms. Sugar, high fructose corn syrup, honey, molasses, or fruit juice concentrates. While a small amount might be acceptable, you generally want to see 2 grams or less of added sugar per slice. Be particularly wary of breads with 5 or more grams of sugar per slice, as these will definitely spike your blood glucose. Fourth, look for indicators of traditional fermentation. Words like sourdough, levain, naturally fermented, or slow rise suggest that the bread has undergone the beneficial fermentation process that can help moderate blood sugar response. However, be careful because some manufacturers use these terms loosely, so you'll still want to check the other criteria. Fifth, consider the ingredient list length. Generally speaking, breads with shorter ingredient lists tend to be less processed and more blood sugar friendly. A good bread might have as few as 4 to 6 ingredients: flour, water, salt, and a natural leavening agent like sourdough starter. Be suspicious of breads with long lists of unpronounceable chemicals, preservatives, and additives. Sixth, pay attention to the bread's density and weight. This might sound unusual, but it's actually a reliable indicator. Breads that are genuinely made from whole grains and have good fiber content tend to be denser and heavier than their refined counterparts. If a loaf feels surprisingly light for its size, it's likely made primarily from refined flour, even if the label claims otherwise. Seventh, don't be fooled by color alone. Many manufacturers add caramel coloring, molasses, or other darkening agents to make bread appear more wholesome than it actually is. A truly whole grain bread gets its darker color from the natural bran and germ in the flour, not from added colorings. Now that you understand the foundation principles, let's dive into the 3 specific types of bread that consistently perform well for blood sugar management. These aren't just theoretical recommendations. They're based on both scientific research and real-world testing by people who monitor their glucose levels regularly. The first type is authentic, naturally fermented bread, made from 100% whole grain flour. This category includes genuine, sourdough breads, but with some important qualifications. Not all sourdough is created equal, and unfortunately, many commercial sourdough breads are not actually fermented using traditional methods. True sourdough bread is made using a live culture of wild yeasts and bacteria, often called a sourdough starter or levain. This culture ferments the dough slowly, typically over 12 to 24 hours or even longer. During this extended fermentation process, several beneficial things happen that make the bread more blood sugar friendly. First, the natural acids produced during fermentation, primarily lactic acid and acetic acid, help break down some of the starches in the flour. This pre-digestion process means that when you eat the bread, there are fewer rapidly digestible starches to spike your blood sugar. The acids also slow down the rate at which the remaining starches are digested and absorbed. Second, the fermentation process partially breaks down gluten proteins and other compounds that can interfere with nutrient absorption and digestive health. While this doesn't make sourdough gluten-free, it does make it easier to digest for many people, which can indirectly support better blood sugar management. Third, genuine sourdough fermentation actually increases the availability of certain nutrients, including B vitamins and minerals like magnesium and zinc, which play important roles in blood sugar regulation. The key is finding authentic sourdough bread. Here's how to identify the real deal. First, check the ingredient list. Genuine sourdough should list sourdough starter, levain, or wild yeast culture among the ingredients. It should not contain commercial yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, as the primary leavening agent, though some bakers use a small amount to help with consistency. Second, authentic sourdough has a distinctive tangy flavor that comes from the natural fermentation acids. If the bread tastes sweet or bland, it's likely not truly fermented. The sourness can range from mild to quite pronounced, depending on the specific starter culture and fermentation time. Third, examine the texture and appearance. Real sourdough typically has an irregular crumb structure with holes of various sizes. The crust is usually thick and chewy, and the bread has a somewhat dense texture compared to commercial bread. If it looks uniform and fluffy like Wonder Bread, it's probably not authentic sourdough. Fourth, genuine sourdough bread typically has a shorter shelf life than commercial bread because it doesn't contain the preservatives found in mass-produced loaves. This is actually a good sign. Real food spoils, while heavily processed food can sit on shelves for weeks. When shopping for sourdough, your best bet is often local bakeries that specialize in artisanal breads. Many cities now have bakeries that focus specifically on traditional fermentation methods. You can usually tell by talking to the bakers. They'll be excited to discuss their starter cultures and fermentation processes. Chain grocery stores are increasingly carrying authentic sourdough as well, but you'll need to read labels carefully. If you're interested in the science behind why sourdough works so well for blood sugar management, several studies have demonstrated its benefits. Research published in the British Journal of Nutrition found that sourdough bread made from whole grain flour produced significantly lower glucose and insulin responses compared to regular whole wheat bread. Another study in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that the organic acids in sourdough can reduce the glycemic index of bread by up to 25%. The best sourdough for blood sugar management is made from 100% whole grain flour, particularly whole wheat, spelt, or rye. Spelt sourdough deserves special mention because spelt is an ancient grain that naturally contains more protein and fiber than modern wheat varieties. It also has a different gluten structure that many people find easier to digest. When eating, sourdough portion size still matters. A typical serving would be one medium slice, about 1 ounce, which provides roughly 15 to 20 grams of carbohydrates. The beauty of good sourdough is that it's quite satisfying, so you're less likely to overeat compared to refined bread that leaves you wanting more. Timing can also make a difference. Many people find that eating sourdough earlier in the day, particularly at breakfast or lunch, allows their body to better utilize the carbohydrates for energy rather than storing them as fat. Pairing sourdough with protein and healthy fats, which we'll discuss in detail later, further improves its blood sugar impact. The second category of blood sugar-friendly bread is 100% whole rye bread, particularly the dark, dense varieties, like Pumpernickel or Scandinavian-style Rugbrød. Rye bread has some unique properties that make it exceptional for blood sugar management, and the research supporting its benefits is quite compelling. Rye contains high levels of a specific type of fiber called arabinoxylan, which is particularly effective at slowing down carbohydrate digestion and absorption. Arabinoxylans form a gel-like substance in your digestive tract that acts as a barrier, preventing rapid glucose absorption. This fiber also feeds beneficial gut bacteria, supporting overall digestive and metabolic health. The key word here is 100% rye. Many commercial rye breads are actually made primarily from wheat flour with just enough rye flour added to justify the name. These hybrid breads don't provide the same metabolic benefits as true rye bread. You want bread that lists 100% whole rye flour as the first and preferably only flour ingredient. Authentic pumpernickel bread, the traditional German variety, is made from coarsely ground whole rye flour and baked at very low temperatures, for many hours, sometimes up to 24 hours. This slow, low-heat baking process creates unique chemical reactions that further reduce the bread's impact on blood sugar. The long baking time also develops pumpernickel's characteristic dark color and slightly sweet flavor, which comes from natural caramelization rather than added sugars. Scandinavian-style rye breads, like Danish Rugbrød, are also excellent choices. These breads are typically dense, moist, and packed with seeds and grains. They're designed to be eaten in thin slices, much thinner than typical American bread slices, which helps with portion control while still providing satisfying nutrition. The research on rye bread and blood sugar is impressive. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that rye bread produced 25% lower insulin responses compared to white wheat bread, even when the total carbohydrate content was similar. Another study in the Journal of Nutrition showed that regular consumption of whole grain rye products improved insulin sensitivity over time. What makes rye particularly interesting is its effect on satiety. The combination of fiber, protein, and slowly digestible starches in rye bread helps you feel full and satisfied for hours after eating. This can help prevent the blood sugar roller coaster that leads to frequent snacking and overeating throughout the day. When shopping for rye bread, look for varieties that feel heavy and dense in your hand. The bread should have a rich, earthy flavor with a slight sourness if it's been naturally fermented. Many authentic rye breads also contain seeds like caraway, which add both flavor and additional fiber. Be particularly careful to avoid light rye breads, which are typically made mostly from refined wheat flour, with just enough rye to change the color slightly. These breads offer none of the metabolic benefits of true rye bread. Also be wary of rye breads that contain significant amounts of wheat flour, corn syrup, or other added sugars. One challenge with rye bread is that it can be difficult to find. In regular grocery stores, particularly in areas without strong German or Scandinavian populations. However, the growing interest in traditional and functional foods has led to increased availability. Health food stores, specialty bakeries, and even some mainstream grocery chains now carry authentic rye breads. If you can't find good rye bread locally, it's actually one of the easier breads to make at home. Rye flour is widely available, and many online resources provide detailed instructions for making traditional pumpernickel or rugbrød. Home baking also allows you to control exactly what goes into your bread and experiment with different seed and grain combinations. The third category of exceptional blood sugar-friendly bread includes breads made from sprouted grains, or those featuring oats and barley as primary ingredients. These breads leverage specific compounds and fiber types that have been shown to significantly moderate blood glucose responses. Sprouted grain breads are made from grains that have been allowed to germinate before being ground into flour. During the sprouting process, the grain starches begin to break down into simpler compounds, and the levels of fiber, protein, and certain vitamins actually increase. The sprouting process also reduces the amount of rapidly digestible starch, which translates to a gentler impact on blood sugar. The most well-known sprouted grain bread is probably Ezekiel bread, which combines sprouted wheat, barley, millet, lentils, soybeans, and spelt. However, many other manufacturers now produce excellent sprouted grain breads. The key is ensuring that the bread is made from 100% sprouted grains rather than a mixture of sprouted and regular flours. When shopping for sprouted grain bread, you'll often find it in the freezer section, rather than on the regular bread shelves. This is because sprouted grain breads typically don't contain the preservatives found in shelf-stable commercial breads. The freezing actually helps preserve the nutritional integrity of the sprouted grains. Oat-based breads deserve special attention for blood sugar management because oats contain a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Beta-glucan has been extensively studied for its ability to slow down carbohydrate absorption and improve insulin sensitivity. It forms a gel-like substance in your digestive tract that effectively slows down the movement of food through your system, preventing rapid glucose spikes. The FDA has actually approved health claims for beta-glucan, recognizing its role in reducing cholesterol levels and supporting heart health. But the blood sugar benefits are equally impressive. Studies have shown that consuming beta-glucan with meals can reduce post-meal glucose spikes by 20 to 30%. For oat bread to be truly beneficial, oats should be the primary ingredient, and ideally, they should be whole oats rather than oat flour. Some excellent breads combine whole oats with other beneficial grains like barley, which also contains beta-glucan, creating a synergistic effect. Barley-based breads are less common but equally valuable for blood sugar management. Barley contains even higher levels of beta-glucan than oats, and it has been used traditionally in many cultures as a staple grain for people needing steady energy. Nordic countries, in particular, have long traditions of barley-based breads that provide sustained energy without blood sugar spikes. When evaluating breads in this category, look for those that prominently feature sprouted grains, whole oats, or whole barley in the ingredient list. The texture of these breads tends to be hearty and substantial, with visible grains and seeds throughout. They should feel dense and moist, quite different from fluffy commercial bread. Many people find that breads in this category are particularly satisfying, requiring smaller portions to feel full. This is partly due to the high fiber and protein content, but also because the complex flavors and textures require more chewing, which naturally slows down eating and helps with satiety signals. Now that we've covered the three main categories of blood sugar-friendly breads, let's talk about how to eat bread in a way that minimizes glucose spikes, regardless of which type you choose. This is where the magic really happens, because the right combinations and eating strategies can dramatically improve even marginal bread choices. The most important principle is never to eat bread alone. When you eat bread by itself, especially on an empty stomach, it creates the fastest and highest blood sugar spike possible. But when you combine bread with protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich foods, you can significantly blunt the glucose response. Protein is particularly powerful for this purpose. When you eat protein with carbohydrates, it stimulates the release of hormones that slow down stomach emptying and glucose absorption. Protein also requires significant energy to digest, which means your body burns calories processing it rather than storing glucose as fat. Excellent protein partners for bread include eggs, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, natural nut butters, cheese, smoked fish, or lean meats. The key is including a substantial amount. Aim for at least 15 to 20 grams of protein when you eat bread. This might mean 2 eggs with your toast, or a generous serving of cottage cheese, or a thick layer of almond butter. Healthy fats work similarly to protein in slowing down digestion and glucose absorption. They also help you feel satisfied and reduce cravings for more carbohydrates later. Great fat sources to pair with bread include avocado, olive oil, nuts and seeds, nut butters, and fatty fish like salmon or sardines. Here's a practical example of how this works. Let's say you want to have toast for breakfast. Instead of just eating buttered white toast, you could have 1 slice of sourdough bread topped with mashed avocado, a drizzle of olive oil, and a perfectly poached egg. The bread provides energy, the avocado and olive oil provide healthy fats and fiber, and the egg provides high-quality protein. This combination will produce a much gentler blood sugar curve than toast alone. The order in which you eat foods can also make a significant difference. Some research suggests that eating protein and vegetables before carbohydrates can help reduce the glucose spike from those carbohydrates. This doesn't mean you need to eat your meal in strict courses, but it does suggest that starting your meal with some protein or vegetables might be beneficial. Vinegar and other acidic foods can also help moderate blood sugar responses. The acetic acid in vinegar has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and reduce post-meal glucose spikes. You might add a small salad with vinaigrette as a starter, or include pickled vegetables with your bread-based meal. The timing of when you eat bread during the day can also matter. Many people find they tolerate carbohydrates better earlier in the day, when their insulin sensitivity is typically higher and their activity levels are about to increase. Eating bread at breakfast or lunch gives your body more opportunity to use the glucose for energy rather than storing it. Physical activity after eating can dramatically improve glucose clearance from your bloodstream. Even a gentle 10 to 15-minute walk after a meal can significantly reduce blood sugar spikes. This doesn't need to be intense exercise, just getting your muscles moving helps them take up glucose from your blood more efficiently. Let's talk about portion sizes, because this is where many people struggle even when choosing the right types of bread. The serving sizes listed on bread packages are often much smaller than what people typically eat. A standard serving is usually 1 slice weighing about 1 ounce, which provides roughly 15 to 20 grams of carbohydrates. However, many people routinely eat 2 or 3 slices at a time, which can quickly add up to 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates, equivalent to eating 3 to 4 slices of white bread in terms of glucose impact. Even with the best bread choices, portion control remains important for blood sugar management. One strategy that many people find helpful is to slice their bread thinner than standard thickness. This allows you to enjoy the satisfaction of eating bread while reducing the total carbohydrate load. Many European-style breads are traditionally eaten in much thinner slices than Americans typically cut. Another approach is to use bread as more of a vehicle for other nutritious foods, rather than as the main component of the meal. Think of it as a foundation for generous amounts of protein, healthy fats, and vegetables rather than the star of the show. This naturally leads to eating appropriate portions while maximizing nutritional value. Mindful eating practices can also help with portion control and blood sugar management. When you eat slowly and pay attention to your body's hunger and fullness signals, you're less likely to overeat. This is particularly important with bread, which can be easy to consume quickly without realizing how much you've eaten. Now let's address some of the common marketing traps that can mislead even well-intentioned shoppers. The bread industry has become quite sophisticated at using health claims and attractive packaging to make less-than-ideal products appear nutritious. Multigrain is one of the most misleading terms in bread marketing. It simply means the bread contains multiple types of grains, but says nothing about whether those grains are whole or refined. Many multigrain breads are made primarily from refined wheat flour with tiny amounts of other grains added for appearance and marketing purposes. These breads can spike blood sugar just as much as white bread. Made with whole grains is another deceptive phrase. This could mean the bread contains any amount of whole grains, even if refined flour is still the primary ingredient. Only breads labeled as 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat guarantee that all the flour comes from whole grains. No high fructose corn syrup sounds healthy, but doesn't mean the bread doesn't contain other forms of added sugar. Manufacturers might use regular sugar, honey, molasses, fruit juice concentrates, or dozens of other sweetening agents while technically avoiding high fructose corn syrup. Gluten-free breads deserve special mention because many people assume they're healthier or better for blood sugar management. In reality, most gluten-free breads are made from refined starches like rice flour, tapioca starch, and potato starch. These ingredients can actually spike blood sugar faster than wheat flour. If you need gluten-free bread for medical reasons, look for varieties made from almond flour, coconut flour, or other low-carbohydrate alternatives. Artisanal or bakery-style breads aren't automatically healthier either. While some artisanal bakeries do use traditional methods and high-quality ingredients, others simply use these terms for marketing appeal while still producing bread from refined flour with added sugars and preservatives. Color can be particularly deceptive. Many brown breads get their color from caramel coloring, molasses, or other additives rather than from whole grains. Truly whole grain bread might actually be lighter in color than you expect, especially if it's made from whole wheat pastry flour or other lighter colored whole grains. Here's a streamlined shopping checklist you can use to quickly evaluate any bread, whether you're in a grocery store, bakery, or farmer's market. This 10-second assessment can save you from blood sugar disasters and help you identify truly beneficial options. First, check the first ingredient. It must say 100% whole grain, followed by the specific grain type. If it says enriched, flour, wheat flour, or just whole wheat flour without the 100%, put it back. Second, look at the fiber content. You want at least 3 grams per slice, preferably 5 or more. If the bread doesn't list fiber content or lists less than 3 grams, skip it. Third, check added sugars. Look for 2 grams or less per slice. Be particularly wary of anything with 5 or more grams of sugar, which will definitely spike your glucose. Fourth, scan for fermentation indicators. Look for words like sourdough, levain, naturally fermented, or slow rise. These suggest beneficial fermentation processes. Fifth, evaluate the ingredient list length. Shorter is generally better. Be suspicious of long lists with unpronounceable chemicals and preservatives. Sixth, assess the bread's weight and density. Pick up the loaf. It should feel substantial for its size. Light, fluffy bread is usually made from refined flour regardless of what the label claims. Seventh, avoid obvious red flags. If you see caramel coloring, high fructose corn syrup, or other artificial ingredients in the first few ingredients, move on to another option. This entire evaluation should take less than 30 seconds once you practice it a few times. You'll quickly develop an eye for quality bread that supports your blood sugar goals. For those who want to take a more scientific approach to bread selection, consider investing in a continuous glucose monitor or regular blood glucose meter. These devices allow you to test your personal response to different breads and eating strategies. Everyone's metabolism is slightly different. so what works perfectly for your friend might need adjustment for your body. To conduct your own bread, experiment. Choose a day when you can monitor your blood sugar before eating and then at 30-minute intervals for 2 hours after eating. Test the same portion size of different breads under similar conditions. Same time of day, similar activity level, and similar foods eaten earlier. This will give you objective data about which breads work best for your individual metabolism. Keep detailed notes about not just the blood sugar numbers, but also how you feel. Energy levels, hunger, mood, and cravings are all important indicators of how well a particular food works for your body. Some people find that even if their blood sugar numbers look good, certain breads leave them feeling tired or craving more food, while others provide sustained energy and satisfaction. Don't forget to test your favorite bread combinations as well. You might find that a bread that causes problems when eaten alone becomes perfectly manageable when combined with the right proteins and fats. This kind of personal experimentation can be incredibly valuable for developing an eating pattern that you can sustain long-term. It's also worth testing different portion sizes. You might discover that you can comfortably handle one slice of a particular bread, but not two, or that thin slices work better than thick ones. This information helps you make practical decisions about how to include bread in your regular eating routine. As we near the end of our comprehensive exploration of blood sugar-friendly breads, let's recap the key points that will serve you best in making daily decisions about bread consumption. The 3 categories of bread that consistently support stable blood sugar are authentic naturally fermented breads made from 100% whole grains, particularly sourdough made from whole wheat, spelt, or rye, 100% whole rye breads, especially dense varieties like Pumpernickel or Scandinavian Rugbrød, and breads made from sprouted grains or featuring oats and barley as primary ingredients. Your shopping checklist should prioritize breads with 100% whole grain flour as the first ingredient, at least 3 to 5 grams of fiber per slice, minimal added sugars, evidence of traditional fermentation, short ingredient lists, substantial weight and density, and absence of artificial additives and preservatives. Remember that how you eat bread matters as much as which bread you choose. Always combine bread with significant amounts of protein and healthy fats. Consider eating vegetables or protein before carbohydrates. Include acidic foods when possible. Time your bread consumption earlier in the day. Practice portion control, and engage in light physical activity after meals when feasible. The most important principle underlying all of these recommendations is that bread doesn't have to be eliminated from a healthy, blood sugar-conscious eating plan. With the right knowledge and choices, bread can be part of a nutritious diet that supports steady energy levels, good mood, and long-term metabolic health. This isn't about perfection or never enjoying foods you love. It's about making informed choices that allow you to have your bread and good blood sugar too. The goal is developing a sustainable approach that you can maintain for years to come, not a restrictive diet that leaves you feeling deprived. As you implement these strategies, be patient with yourself, and remember that small, consistent changes often produce better long-term results than dramatic overhauls. Start by swapping out one type of bread for a better choice, or focus on improving how you combine bread with other foods. Once these changes become habit, you can continue refining your approach. The science of nutrition is constantly evolving, and individual responses to foods can vary significantly. Stay curious about how different foods affect your body. Remain open to adjusting your approach as needed, and don't hesitate to work with qualified healthcare providers who can help you personalize these general guidelines to your specific health needs and goals. Your relationship with food should enhance your life, not create anxiety or restriction. The information I've shared today is meant to empower you with knowledge that supports both your health and your enjoyment of eating. Bread has been nourishing humans for thousands of years, and with the right choices and strategies, it can continue to be part of a healthy, satisfying way of eating that supports your metabolic health and overall well-being for years to come. Remember Margaret, whom I mentioned at the beginning? She's not unique in finding a way to enjoy bread while maintaining excellent blood sugar control. Thousands of people have discovered that the right bread choices, combined with smart eating strategies, allow them to include this satisfying food in their daily routine without compromising their health goals. You can be one of them, starting with your very next trip to the bakery or grocery store.